Happy New Year's, everyone. Got all your New Year's resolutions made? You know, those gym memberships that none of us will ever actually use? No, I'm just kidding. Welcome to my top 5 games of 2016. First of all, I'm going to preface this by saying these are not necessarily the best games of 2016, but they are the ones that I personally found the most enjoyable. Coming in at number 5 is Uncharted 4. As you can see by the lack of footage, I didn't really have a way to capture the gameplay footage, but Uncharted is definitely one of my favorite series of all time. I am a huge Indiana Jones fan, and honestly, I even like the fourth one. Uncharted is what happens when you take that series, you fast forward into modern times, and make it a video game. Picking up years after the events of Uncharted 3, the fourth game takes an aged, almost bored Nathan Drake on one final adventure, and damn is it good. I'm pretty biased on this one as Drake is easily one of my favorite characters in gaming. His sarcastic wit is front and center as usual, and being paired up with Troy Baker makes this all the better. The gameplay is the typical Uncharted affair, and it really doesn't do much to elevate from the previous installments, but it's done with such confidence and refinement that it is one of the best send-offs to one of adventure gaming's most influential series. At number 4, I have Ghost 1.0. I actually did a review for this one, and I'll link it below for a slightly more in-depth look into exactly why I like it so much. This indie gem was made by the developer of a game called Unepic, which is also very good. It is a 2D Metroidvania game filled with style and charm. The characters are great and believable, and the banter between them is fantastic. This leads to some genuinely funny and heartwarming moments. The story is also fairly grounded, even though it's definitely of the sci-fi variety. The game world is littered with collectibles that encourage backtracking, and there is a large amount of upgrades and weapons that give an awesome sense of progression. Seriously, I always felt like I was getting something new or improving upon Ghost's abilities. You will need to replay it or grind a fair amount in order to unlock everything the game has to offer. The developer has also added extra missions. While they don't add anything to the story, they give you even more reason to jump back into the game after finishing it, just cementing how fun this game is to play. Hey, Dark Souls 3 coming in at number 3, go figure. I was one of those people that immediately fell in love with the Souls series. I remember playing Demon Souls when that was released on the PS3. Funny story about that, I actually purchased the game from a future shop, drove all the way home, I lived about an hour away from the closest game store, and found the disc wasn't even in the box. Needless to say, my 17-year-old self was not all that impressed. Anyways, back to Dark Souls. Not everyone likes these games, and I get it. It's hard, and you need to learn the mechanics of the game. However, once you do, it can be tough to find a more rewarding game than this. The sense of accomplishment you get after finally killing that bastard of a boss is euphoric at times, and I found myself on multiple occasions yelling and flipping the TV off in happiness. This game does not hold your hand, at all. Hell, most of the story is somewhat hidden away unless you really pay attention and search for everything. The NPCs are cryptic and offer little in the way of actual help, and the game takes immense pleasure in beating you down over and over. Over the course of the series, the gameplay has been refined to almost an art form. It's slow and deliberate, and those who rush in die. A lot. Due to this refinement, this iteration of the series is by far the easiest to get into and enjoy for the casual player or newcomer to the series. I can't recommend this game enough for fans of action RPGs and dungeon crawlers. Sadly, as far as I'm aware, this marks the end of the Dark Souls series for the time being, so this is one hell of a final hurrah for this amazing series. Coming in at number 2 is Salt and Sanctuary. Look, another 2D Metroidvania game on the list. You'd almost think this is my favorite genre. This one, however, is heavily influenced by the previous game on the list. It takes its inspiration and boldly displays it for the world to see. They say imitation is the most sincere form of flattery, and in this case, it's also one of the best ways to make a game. Taking the formula of Dark Souls and sticking it into a 2D plane is a great way to make it feel fresh. This game also has an intense amount of platforming, which some might not enjoy, but I personally found quite interesting. You'll get special powers such as being able to invert the gravity to run on the roof in order to access new areas. This leads to somewhat frustrating but also hilarious deaths, such as falling 100 feet straight up to your death. I personally found this game to be harder than Dark Souls strictly due to the platforming aspect. I chose heavy armor and a two-handed sword for basically the entire game, and this leads to your jumping ability to be limited in some regard. Salt and Sanctuary also has a somewhat more clear goal than Dark Souls as well. Save the princess, kill the bosses. I can appreciate that as I found the game to be a little more focused. I also found the sense of progression to be much faster. This game is made to be played multiple times, as my first playthrough took me about 18 hours. I didn't do everything in my first playthrough, and on subsequent playthroughs, I also found alternate paths and even bosses that I didn't even know existed. The bosses are another strong point in this game. The art design behind it looks like something ripped straight out of a Clive Barker illustration. Everything is extremely dark and horror themed. Time for some honorable mentions. First up, Final Fantasy 15. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it as I could talk about it for hours. I just feel this game needed to be mentioned. I know the criticism the game has, and no, it does not live up to the hype that a 9-year development cycle produces, but damn, I enjoyed the hell out of my time with this game. Combat is fast, story is well fleshed out and interesting, although it does stumble in a few places. The open world is vast and full of things to do, and the characters are fantastic. This, coupled with the free DLC that will be released with the co-op mode in the future, leads to a must-buy for any JRPG fan. This is the best Final Fantasy in over a decade and a return to form for the series. Doom. I struggled with this one. I wanted it on the list, but ultimately the other games on this list took precedence for one reason. Doom has been done before. That's not a bad thing, however. This game brings back Doom. Kill everything in the most brutal way possible and don't give a fuck about doing it. Doom handles everything with sheer badassery. Why just pull a lever when you can rip the damn thing off? Why push away a computer screen when you can physically hurl it across the room? Doom Guy embodies badass. I love this game and everything it stands for. Coming in at number 1 is Hyper Light Drifter. This one many of you probably have never even heard of. I picked it up on a whim one day, drawn in by the pixelated art style. What I was greeted with was one of the most interesting game experiences I have had in a while. You are a drifter, searching for a cure to an illness. The entire game is basically devoid of dialogue other than grunts, and the story is told through still images and little cutscenes. I refuse to spoil anything more than that, as this game really needs to be played to understand. Fair warning though, you will have no idea what the hell is going on for the first little while. The basic idea is going from area to area, activating nodes, and then defeating a boss. This is all done from an isometric point of view that harkens back to the original Legend of Zelda. The sense of exploration and loneliness is further expanded upon by the fantastic soundtrack. It's both haunting and beautiful at the same time, and I found myself just listening to it more than once. Being pixelated, one would expect the graphics to be nothing special, but some of the views and vistas the game pulls off are breathtaking and downright creepy. Numerous times I was blown away by the amount of detail the developers were able to squeeze into the game. This game is also hard. Your character can only take a few hits before you die, and some of the enemies can kill you in 1 or 2 shots. But the checkpoint system is extremely good, so it never really feels unfair. You can upgrade your character, but at no point do you ever feel overpowered. Enemies can and will kill you at a moment's notice, provided you are not on the top of your game. You simply get a bit better at surviving as you go. This also has a lot to do with player skill. It's an example of easy to learn, hard to master. These things all culminate into my favorite gaming experience of 2016. I finished the game in a day. The following day, I immediately jumped in and started a second playthrough. So there you have it, my top games of 2016. This is by no means a definitive list, as there are other very good games made throughout 2016. Tyranny from Obsidian is a perfect example. These were just my personal favorites. Let me know what your guys' favorites were down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and share it with a friend. It all helps the channel grow. Thank you all so much for watching. Have yourselves a great day, and I will see you all in the next episode.